Oh, wow.
First ones we did, we planted this day. Next morning, they're just like, wow. No, they're just like the green shoots.
Okay, everybody's in.
All right. We're good.
Oh,
Everybody's
yep.
muted?
We're good. They should be.
Good evening. Welcome to the meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if we could all please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Put your hand on your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. I have a kind of a very jam-packed agenda tonight, with lots of interesting information to share with everybody, so I would appreciate if we could hold all the questions to we get to the public discussion part of the meeting, if that's possible. I wanted to start off first with we have Carlos Vargas from VHB, and he wants to give a short update about what's going on in the vid, because some of the stuff they're doing on the Bayside maybe could be advantageous or give other residents on the Bayside some information that hopefully can help them. So we're going to start off with Carlos. So if you want to unmute Carlos, he's going to give a updated synopsis.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. Thank you for letting me jump on this meeting early, and I have another scheduled commitment after this, so I appreciate that for accommodating me. So just real quickly about the project. Currently, we're in the preliminary design phase. That consisted of doing a coastal conditions analysis of the site, of the village improvement district. We looked at the topography and bathymetry, water levels, extreme water levels, winds, wind generate waves, and fetch and all that. So we were able to essentially assess the coastal condition there and document that in the report, and create a baseline and a basis of design for our concept. Our concept is a headland breakwater system. It's an offshore breakwater that would consist of a hybrid approach of stabilized rock structures out in the water and a stable beach behind it. This system has been tested and developed in the Mid-Atlantic, and it's been successful. So that is what is the concept that we were putting forth, developed by our coastal engineers and our environmental design team. Since we've created the concept, we've then moved into the pre-application meetings with the agencies. We've met with Army Corps of Engineers, Department of State, the DC, and all the reactions have been favorable. They've are essentially told us to proceed and with preparing a permit application. So the one agency that we still have yet to meet with, and we're slated to meet with next week, is the Town of Southampton trustees. So they are next, and subsequent or contingent upon that meeting, the next steps would be to do to start the permitting and design and engineering phase of the project. And that's pretty much an update. And I guess, Mayor, if there's any, would you want me to go in more detail, or is that good enough for now?
That's up to you. If you want to have a couple more, I allocated like 5 minutes. So if you have a couple more points you want to share and you have the time, that's great. If not,
okay. Yeah, no, actually one other thing I'll mention is that this project is definitely it serves as a pilot project for what can be done on the Bayside. But it's definitely not a one size fits all approach. There's this concept is what was site specific to this area of the village improvement district. Other parts of the village would could benefit from other types of shoreline stabilization. There could be soft approaches where it could be shoreline marsh restorations, or there could be a living shoreline where your structures are closer to the shoreline. So there really is this could be a segue into looking at a village-wide assessment and vulnerability assessment of the entire shoreline within the West Hampton Dunes. Um, so again, like I said, this approach has been tried and true within our footprint of VHB. I'm not sure if most are aware, but we have coastal engineers that have been working with and that have been doing these types of approaches since 1980s, I would say. They have pretty much coined the term living shorelines. If you look them up, they're from the village. They're from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science that's located in Gloucester Point, Virginia. And our team's been working with them for many years, and they've developed shoreline management plans for various counties within Virginia and for the National Park Service. So there's definitely a prescribed approach to shoreline management, and they're really ahead of the game with this. They they've been able um, to convince, I don't say convince, it's strong, but they've been able to promote I'll say promote natural nature-based features as the preferred alternative to hardened bulkhead, and hardened structures. So really the mentality there is different. You have to, in order to do a hardened structure, you need to prove otherwise that a natural nature-based feature will not work. Whereas New York State is sort of the opposite, where there's a general permit for bulkheads, but not one for natural nature-based features. So
Carlos,
uh,
will any of what you're doing affect the east or west of there and cause them to have any more erosion or any problems because of what you're creating?
Sure, that's a common question we get a lot, and we did look at the end conditions. That's always a concern, is always the end condition of what happens to the adjacent lands. The one thing that one thing that we assess is that when we design these systems, that we make sure that the sand transport system is still preserved there. The elevations are set not too high to the point where you're actually robbing someone of sand. So it's not like the perpendicular groins that Army Corps has done in the past, where if you install them, you could potentially be robbing sand from your adjacent neighbor. In this case, the structures are parallel, and they allow for water for the sediment transport system to continue. It's a bimodal system, so it still allows that natural process to happen.
Thank you.
Carlos, how many homes are you representing in this?
Currently, I mean, it's within the village improvement district, so there are 12 within that district at the moment.
Have you made an estimate of what the total project will cost?
Right now, we're just in preliminary design phase, so we have a rough order of magnitude, but we don't have it. That still has to be truthed by going with further design and analysis. And right now, we're just at the concept level, so we don't have a definitive number.
Can you give a range to it?
It's probably in the range of it depends on when the sand quantity and the sand amounts. Sand is going to cost a lot, so depending on how much. So we don't even have a survey of the area. We have just general estimates, but I would say it's somewhere. If I were to look at what was done at Patchogue, it's somewhere in the range of probably between probably 2 million to 4 million. I would say somewhere in that range.
Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions, just email the village and we'll get back to you if it's something that, we can have the information. We'll be more than happy to share it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Next, I just want to re-announce the village website, which we launched after the last meeting, which is www.whdunes.gov, is up and running. We also have what I call the red alert bar on the website if you haven't gone there yet, and we'll use that to provide information to village residents about any water outages, power outages, road work, etc. This way, if there's something going on or you're concerned, hopefully we'll be able to have a chance to post it on the website, and you'll have that information ahead of time or as fast as we know it. A reminder again that if you have an alarm, you need to have an alarm permit. They're available on the village, on the website. Please fill them out and return them to the village ASAP. This will be very helpful to the constables in case of an emergency. We've had, the fire department here today. We've had other emergencies in the last week. False alarms, but still, we want to make sure that we have the ability to reach you or whoever takes care of your property. I know a lot of you will be out here this time of the year, but in the off season, it's important that we have a way to handle those situations and try to help you out. I've been working with the Suffolk County Water Authority in terms of repairing the catwalk, and we've basically come to an agreement with them where they're going to actually split the cost of doing it. So we're going to pay 50% for the catwalk, and then we'll be building the kayak racks over there also. So that's moving forward. I don't think it'll be done by Memorial Day due to their board meeting is, our board meeting is tonight, which will pass a resolution. Their board meeting is May 22nd, and the contractor will need some time to stage it, but it should be available by the time most people are out here this summer, we hope.
Erwin, right now, that's kind of a dangerous situation, I understand over there. I haven't seen it myself, but I was talking to a resident, and at the end of that boardwalk, the steps are sort of hanging and loose. So residents should sort of be warned to, I don't know, step off or step around it. So until we
Yeah, I agree. That's why we're working. That's why we're working to get it fixed. And
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, again, I got them to actually pay for half of it, so the village is not paying the full freight.
Good.
Another thing that I'm excited to share with everybody is that the West End flooding, I think, has been fixed. Suffolk County came out here and they did the work for us, and they saved us multiple six figures that the village would have had a bond for, and they paid for it on our behalf. And so as a result, I want to thank Suffolk County Executive Ed Romaine, DPW Commissioner Charlie Bartha, Parks Commissioner John Janot, and Deputy Parks Commissioner Jason Smegan for all their help and support on this project. I've been, listen, I've only been in office for a little while, but this was an ongoing problem before I got elected, and we were able to solve it in, less than 6 months, and the work's been done. And we had the big rain in between the work, the first day 1 and day 2 of the work. So hopefully when we have the next rainstorm, we'll see how well this initial project works, and hopefully we won't be wading through water on the west end. Village Hall renovations have started. I want to thank Trustee Mulhern, and I also want to give a big thanks to Roberto from Roku Landscaping, who graciously donated all the work done to beautify Village Hall with the new fencing and the nice tree in front, and he put in some irrigation, and we appreciate that. And if anybody has some landscaping stuff, you might want to consider him because he's been a good friend to the village. NICOM, the finance committee, accepted me as a member for that, so I'll probably be attending as my member at the first meeting that we have, which is this May up in the Sagamore. Street sweeping. Like to try to sweep the streets before the big holidays. So we're gonna have a street sweeping the week of May 19th. I know some residents in the past asked me to give them a heads up because they want to sweep the stones in front of their property back onto their driveway. So this way, you've all been given a warning. I will put it on the website, so I don't want to hear that I cleaned the street, but I took your stones. Maybe that didn't come out right. Anyway, another thing is, since a lot of people are coming back out and the weather's nice and we have this beautiful new village hall and we have an awning and the Mattioli's donated tables and chairs, I'd like to basically have what I call coffee with the mayor. So Saturday, June 6th and June 14th, between 9 and 11 a.m., I'll be at Village Hall. If you can give me a heads up and let me know you're coming to visit. You don't have to give me a heads up, but this way I'll make sure I have enough coffee and donuts for everybody. Birds on the beach.
And fruit.
And fruit? I don't have a fruit budget, John. Birds on the beach. We will be hiring a licensed firm to remove them, but in order for us to do this, we need the residents to stake the locations and provide the location information with the village ASAP. So I purchased 100 4-foot basically driveway stakes that are orange and white that are at the village hall underneath the steps. So anybody who's had some issues or said they found some birds on the beach or it's concerning them, what I need you all to do is go out and mark the birds, and we'll have somebody come here, basically once and get everything cleaned up before the season starts, but it won't make any sense unless we have the birds marked. So,
Erwin? A week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, Mark and I walked the entire village beach and we flagged all the birds. So they have orange
I
flags.
did, I know that,
There may be more since then.
right, well, I know that, I don't think there's been many more since then. I know that when I spoke to Sandy, she told me she did a certain section, and I know Nani said
Yeah,
they did a certain section.
No.
But if
I
you
walked,
did-
I walked with Sandy. And
Okay,
we did a section, and then Mark and I walked all the way past, down to the groins. And we marked, I think, 30 birds there, and there's another half dozen that Laura Fabrizio told me are on the spit and in that area. So that's,
we're talking about just the ocean side.
well, we should pick up all of them.
We
It's
can't,
on, I mean, it's,
we can't pick up the birds on the private property. So we're only.
but that's Pikes Beach.
Then the town of Southampton should pick them up in Pikes Beach. I was looking, because I spoke to the piping plover people, they said they saw about 15. That's why I thought, since people said there were more, we should go have them remarked. But again,
I sent you pictures of all the birds with the flags on, right? Yeah. So you
They're all flagged.
They're all
Okay,
flagged.
okay.
It's on to the end of the village, they're all.
all right, as long as they're flagged on the ocean, that's what we're gonna
Yeah.
have somebody pick up. You can't go on private property, we can't pick them up from private property. That's fine. And then we can have this done sooner if you think they're all flagged. I just didn't wanna miss any. Okay. A reminder again, like to do possibly a family movie night, which is not the same as the children's movie night, which is scheduled for August 2nd. Two possible dates could be the Saturday night of July 12th, the Saturday night of July 19th. We're still looking for some movie suggestions and input from the residents if they'd like to have this second movie night that would be, more for older children and adults. Another thing I have is that I'd like to do an on-call contract with VHB to help us secure grant funding for the village as a climate smart community and for coastal resilience. There's kind of a time of the essence for this particular thing because the proposals are due to New York State by June 6th, and our next meeting is not till June 12th. And the reason I'm looking at VHB, and I will put in a not to exceed amount, which would be $5,000, is because VHB has done a lot of work on a bay side already. They're here, they've been working on the bid project, and they understand what's going on, and I'm hoping that by paying this de minimis amount of money, we might be able to get some grants that'll let us do larger studies and get money to work on a greater area of the bay. So that's my suggestion, and that's why I'm recommending it. ARPA, which stands for the American Recovery Plan Act, basically, we were getting calls from NICOM telling us that in the previous administration, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but they received the money, I don't know, probably a couple of years ago, but the proper filing was never done, and we were one of the few villages that hadn't done it, and we had to get this resolved by April 30th, but the good news is we were able to resolve it, and we're able to keep the funds by NICOM basically giving us some contacts and information, because we were going back and forth with the state and the federal government, and it was just exacerbating. So anyway, the good news is we got to keep it. One of the residents had reached out to me, and they said that they would be interested in bridge, canasta, mahjong. So if anybody in the village likes to play those things, just send us an email and we'll try to hook you up with each other, and you can have those types of games this summer and enjoy yourself. I'm just being the conduit for that. The New York State Department of State, I just want to let you know that they've been very happy with the work we've been progressing. Gary and I and John have been working on that, and they appreciate our cooperation. And this is in reference to fixing the propane and the 3- and 4-story issues. And they recently sent us a letter, and they provided us an additional 90-day extension till July 8th to try to resolve all these issues, since we have many seasonal residents and we weren't able to get into some of the houses in the off season. And for the most part, most people realizing that unfortunately, even though they maybe had permission to put in buried propane tanks, the state's not accepting that. And it's possible, but highly unlikely that they can get a variance to keep them. So most of them are kind of acquiescing and they're either moving them or picking them up, well, abandoning them and then getting above ground tanks. Also just in the last few days, we had a company that we hired to replace many of the village road signs. We added some crosswalk signs, so instead of having the piece in the middle of the road that people hit or have to drive around, like by Pikes Beach, we now have signs to the right and the left of Pikes Beach. We also realigned some of the heights on some of the stop signs and speeding signs, and also we decided to remove a lot of the unnecessary parking signs. So no parking signs, I'm sorry, not parking signs. No parking signs. This way, it's not in front of everybody's house. So we did what we could to clean it up. We might be a part two of this project. The good news is that we will get reimbursed from what's called CHIPS money, so it won't be coming out of the village coffers. We just have to pay for it, and then we'll get we made sure we could get reimbursed for it. The Board of Ethics has put together a new set of bylaws for the well, actually, the village never had bylaws, so what
Code of ethics.
code of ethics. Okay, the Board of Ethics put together a code of ethics for the village, which will be circulated with the trustees, reviewed by council. They've spent a lot of time on this, and we will probably have a public hearing at the next meeting to adopt those, that code of ethics. Also, on June 21st, we're having a swim safety and CPR class that's going to be here at 10 in the morning. We would like to get people, the information's on the website, but we'd like to get people in advance to register for it because we'd like to have a nice turnout. So please see if that's available for you, your family, your kids, and I suggest that maybe you take advantage of that. I have a few. I'm gonna digress for a second. I have a few personal notes that I want to share tonight. The first one is I'm being inducted into the Nassau County Eagle Scout Hall of Fame on June 25th of this year. I just wanted to share that with everybody in case anybody's a Boy Scout or an Eagle Scout or possibly has some interest in that. Second thing, our daughter Sarah Cavelli's fiance Stan Soroka will be graduating from Downstate Medical School on May 20th as an MD PhD. We'll have to call him Doctor. Also, our daughter is getting married this Memorial Day weekend on the beach, even though I hate the beach, or so I've been told. Okay, and now I'd like to stop speaking and turn it over to Trustee Mulhern, who said she wanted a few minutes on the agenda to discuss whatever she wants to discuss.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to speak tonight on the threats of erosion and sea level rise. But I'd like to begin my comments by explaining a few aspects of how your village government works. New York State has an open meeting law, and it's an important concept for you to understand. Your board cannot meet with more than 2 members to discuss issues without the public being able to watch and listen. So that's why I'm speaking to you and to the entire board. In the future, I suggest that the village begin a new habit similar to other local municipalities, where prior to village meetings, we hold work sessions. A work session allows the trustees to talk to the entire board and to report on the projects they've been working on since the last meeting. This forum allows the public to listen and attend. It also allows for greater transparency into the decision-making process. The responsibilities of your board are the management of village finances, the safety, health, and general welfare of its inhabitants, and most importantly, in our village, the protection of property from flooding and erosion. The other duty of your board is to listen to the residents. It's your property, it's your investment, it's your home, and we're elected by you to be responsive to your concerns. I've been working over the last year trying to understand all the challenges we face with sea level rise and climate change. I've read numerous reports from government agencies, met with several regulatory bodies, and have educated myself on the possibilities of what can be done to protect our shores. Tonight, I'm recommending to the board developing a long-term shoreline protection strategy. Sea level rise over the next 20 years is projected to be from a low estimate of 8 inches to a high estimate of 30 inches. This will create major inundation in our village during spring tides and storm events. While we are protected by being elevated, floodwaters damage cars and anything below your home. With climate change, it is now normal for large storms with high wave action and winds to cause erosion to both the ocean and bay shorelines. I advocated and we voted last month on raising the assessment fee to address these problems. The assessment fund now will bring in $300,000 plus per year. How we spend that money is the question I bring to you and the board tonight. Should the village take a reactive approach? Do we merely sit on the assessment money and wait for disaster to hit, or are we proactive? What do I mean when I say proactive? This is understanding the problems we face on both our oceanfront and bay shoreline, and then setting a goal of maximizing their protection and developing a long-term strategic plan to reach that goal. In other words, making proper moves over time to protect our community for the next 50 years from the forces of sea level rise and climate change. It's my opinion that we can't wait until we're in a drastic situation like a large hurricane to start the planning process. So how do we do this? Where do we start? We need to study the problem first, to understand our erosion history, and then develop a plan that works with the forces of nature. It is the federal government's position that we have already transitioned from the Maurice Raft legal settlement to FIMP, the Fire Island to Montauk Point project, run by the New York State DEC in Albany, not the local Army Corps group who have managed the program under the Raft settlement for the last 27 years. But the Raft agreement actually completes in the fall of 2027. We should have coastal studies done on our ocean front to prepare for future lawsuits if FIMP doesn't come through and before the Raft agreement runs out in 2 short years. Currently, all the shoreline data exists at the Army Corps. We should have our own data. We should have our own expert advice. We should have our own LIDAR surveys done. We need to hire a coastal geologist to analyze this material, understanding the wave action, sediment movement, and erosion trends over the last 27 years of our replenishment history. We need to know how and why our shoreline is changing. We should have the facts on the impact of the tapered groins at the beginning of the village and their impact on our village for the last 30 years. In addition, we should discuss a village-wide sand fencing program to build the dunes, the wall that protects our homes. Should the village deploy every 4 to 5 years a sand fencing project paid through the assessment fund? Should individual residents be required by code to install a sand fence, similar to the program in Quogue? We need your opinion. What about the Bayside? Inconsistent, unsuccessful, and expensive projects like the Village Improvement District burden individual residents with solving their own shoreline erosion problems. They also push the problem to the neighbor downdrift from that area. Carlos said something different, but I know that has been a common problem. You do something one place and it shifts to the other. Do we continue a piece-by-piece bid approach, or do we develop a holistic plan for our entire community? I believe we can do better, but we need to hear from you. Again, the first step is understanding what's happening. We need a 25-year look at erosion on our bayside and its impact on residential properties. A quick study done gratis by the firm InterScience, a local and highly recommended engineering firm in Southampton this past week, of our northern shoreline showed that it's not changing in an entirely uniform way. And I know this isn't going to show up, but basically it's a map of the entire village with a quick rough of everybody's property and how their property has shifted and changed over the years in the last 25 years. Some areas are eroding or reshaping, while others appear to be relatively stable. Once we see clearly on a map what the changes have been over the last 25 years, we can decide what we want to do about it. Here again, we need to design solutions that work with nature, living shorelines, the use of dredge materials from the navigation channel, and maybe even bulkheads in certain areas. The board then needs to look for money to fund these projects, as they are expensive. Most coastal resiliency grants provide funds, but require matching funds from the village. These matching funds would come from our assessment fund. There are several local successful grant applications, like the revitalization of the Greenport waterfront, or just here in West Hampton Beach downtown sewer project. There are several grants available through the Department of State and their local waterfront revitalization project, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Sea Grant, the Town of Southampton Transfer TAC, known as the CPF, just to name a few. When applying for grants, the grants require community engagement and support as the first step. With your input, we could hope to create a sense of ownership and support of any plan where we spend your money. They also need data to support these requests, so we need to hire consultants and do surveys. I'm proposing a community meeting this summer to gather your input. To aid in the discussion, I'd like the approval of the board to create maps which compare our Bayside shoreline in 2001 to what it is now in 2025, showing individual property lots and what has happened to their lot size. Just see here, sorry. Just my last page here, Erwin. So anyways, to do this, I need $3,600, which I propose be taken from the assessment fund. To me, this amount seems very reasonable. There are 167 residential lots on our Bayside. The cost of the maps would be less than $20 per lot. A similar study done by an individual resident would cost thousands. Here is my proposed action plan. Immediately approve funding for Bayside erosion maps from InterScience. That's because we're all here now, particularly in June before people start renting their houses. And, you know, as you want to do your coffee meetings out on the back deck that we now have an awning on, I think good opportunity to hold community meetings while residents are in town and get input and opinions from all who attend. Then we consolidate the residents' input to make a decision on the path forward. If we decide to be proactive, then in the fall of 2025, we hire a coastal geologist and we begin the technical studies. In 2026 and beyond, we develop a comprehensive plan, apply for grants, and implement phased solutions. We're at a turning point. Planning now will protect our village for the next 25 to 50 years. Let's work together to make an informed, sustainable choices. Thank you for your attention. I'd love to hear from the people that are on this call and the people that are here, what your opinion is of that.
I'd like to
But-
thank, if I can, I'd like to thank you for doing all that.
You have to say who you are and where you live.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't need you to this,
That's-
I listen in.
That's okay.
I'm Mary Ann Bell, I live at 860 Dune Road,
Thank
on the
you.
Bayside.
Thank you.
I know that took a lot of time, all that information, so I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that I am a Bayside owner and have been for over 28 years, I guess, I don't even remember now. And I remember this, I grew up out here, so I've known this place like most of my life. We have to think of the Bayside, we can't just protect the ocean side. I mean, we live on the Bayside and we've always helped people put fences on the Bayside because those dudes, they help us too. So, you know, I'm very interested in doing this, and I think that many people who live on the Bayside would feel that way.
I'm along the where I don't see the downside in doing it. I've only been here a couple of years, but I've lived in East Richmond across the way since the early 80s. And I've seen what can happen in a bad storm here, even though I don't own property. But I've lived here, so I know what can happen. So doing a study, I don't see what the downside would be. It costs a little bit of money, but it seems to make sense. Also, I would like to say, the idea of open working meetings is a good idea. The only thing I would suggest is that there should always be an executive session before the public for confidential and legal issues that the public should not be involved in, because there's confidentiality. But working meetings are a staple of most board meetings. And the public is always typically invited. It's usually recommended too. So I think the two things I would say, to me, I don't see the downside.
Excellent.
Robin Waveman, 929 Dune Road. Most of you know I'm an attorney, and I'm going to also pose this to council here. Gina's idea is marvelous. However, it's the difference between the beach and the bay is, at the time the village was formed, the ocean side deeded easements to make because we were required to make the beach public. Our beach is public. Municipal funds can be used for public property. It is illegal to use municipal funds for private property. So the only way that we can get public funds, whether it be our assessment funds or governmental funds, grants and otherwise, would be if all the Bayside residents wanted to do the same thing and grant easements for their property, and then it would be public and not private. Right now, for example, if Gina was walking with the people, they're not allowed to walk on your
I have,
property.
but I do have an easement alongside my property
To
to
who?
pay.
To who?
That's access, that's an
That's
access.
right.
to
Access
the-
to
But
the-
what I'm getting-
They deeded by easement, they deeded the ocean side to the state.
Access to
If,
their-
if you look at a survey, yes, if you look at a survey, it shows New York State owns that property. I looked on my title report when I bought my house, and it specifically shows, I don't own that land. That property is now, it's in New York State, and that's why we get the sand replenishment.
But Robin, we've already addressed this and we've talked to council and council said there's a special document that we can prepare that gives temporary easement for work to
That's
be
to do
done.
work, but that's.
And there's things to be done and there's other ways to get around that. Also, we have to talk about, we also have to talk about, we only own to the high water mark. But there's also, the village owns a lot of the area, about 1,000 feet, and then Southampton has
we
jurisdiction, so
don't
there's,
own it, we just, we control
okay.
it, I think.
We don't know
I-
the Southampton.
But we talked to
trustee.
council, council says there's a
Well,
way
they-
around this.
Sit to Jared, maybe you can.
I don't have an immediate answer to this. It's a complicated question. It's certainly true that the municipality cannot expend funds to benefit a private homeowner. It's a gift. It's unconstitutional. So there is, to the extent that this is done as a comprehensive plan that is going to benefit the entire community by virtue of preventing flooding on the bay side, affecting the ocean side, or vice versa, there may be a way to have that whole thing as a wholesome approach that the village could fund to a degree. But it requires some degree of study. It's gonna require some analysis, and we're gonna have to figure out the scope of this project. And whether there is going to be a legitimate benefit to all of the homeowners, both on the ocean side, on the bay side, wherever the money is being spent. So that you don't run afoul of that gift issue.
As a matter of fact, in Sagaponic, I think it is, they did a beach replenishment and they paid for it themselves.
Yes,
The homeowners paid, chipped in, and all paid because they don't have public beaches, they have private beaches.
Mark Gavioli, 53
I was
Road.
still talking,
So,
can I finish?
okay, good.
And so the other option would be if council researches it and finds that because private versus public is two options. One, we get everybody on the bay side to agree to do what everybody on the ocean side to 32 years ago. Or we have more bids, you know, just like the bid group that is paying it for them all by themselves. The 12 homeowners are paying whatever.
If we're just talking about the study, that's what I was referring
Yeah.
to. If we're talking about actually depositing
Yeah.
material
Yeah,
on
yeah,
somebody's property, that's a different issue.
Now, that's what I'm talking about, ultimately having a plan to fix the bayside flooding or bayside erosion issues. You know, I see Teresa Mattioli has had her.
I have a lot of hands up.
And
Yeah.
she has lost tremendous amount of,
This is a very important issue, I know, for this community. It's also an extremely big project. And you're going to need experts to kind of guide you through the steps.
Mhm.
So my recommendation to the board is that you engage an expert that can take you through the process in a way that's efficient and intelligent, and will solve issues as we go along. Because if we're taking this piecemeal and we're doing studies here and we're gonna get maps there, you're gonna end up spending good money after
can
bad.
we pay for that? If
If
it's to study the bayside?
you're going to do a comprehensive study of coastal management, oceanside,
No,
bayside altogether.
because Oceanside is being managed through FIM, so that's my question, if we're looking to do it.
It's to the
Can
extent, to the
this
extent,
board,
yes, they can, to the extent that the study is going to reveal some
Over.
solution to prevent flooding from the bayside into the village.
it's not really into the
All
village,
right.
so it's just, it's causing erosion on their property.
But I think that that's a, I'm sorry to jump in here, but like,
No,
no one's
can you
acknowledging our
wait?
hands.
Can you wait?
oh,
Cause I
right.
have Teresa
I'm
first.
sorry, well, Mark, I think wanted to say something and then.
Yeah, and then I want to go to Teresa.
Right,
Thank you. What trustee Mulhern has put on the table is to develop a comprehensive, long-term plan to study and to possibly deal with the erosion on our village. Okay, we're not talking about an individual piece of property, we're talking about the whole village. And yes, the ocean and the bay are different, but the RAP agreement is gone in less than 2 years. The FIM project takes over. We don't know what's gonna happen with the FIM project. I totally agree. We need our own data to understand what's happening on the beach. If we have to go to sue for more sand or emergency pumping, we should have our own data. Sitting here and waiting for a catastrophe is ridiculous. We need long-term planning. We need experts to come in. The details will happen later, but we need a plan, we need to be studied, and to deal with 10 or 12 houses, that's 10 or 12 houses. We have hundreds of houses in this village. We can't do it 10 by 10 by 10. Thank you.
And nobody's saying that we don't, well, I agree that we should have a plan. I mean, I think the village should have had a plan. I mean, 30 years later, we shouldn't be starting a plan. But again, you know, we're a new administration and we've gotten a lot of stuff done and we've cleaned up a lot of stuff. And this is definitely something that I'm working with Trustee Mulhern, that we definitely want to move forward. I just have to make sure that whatever we do is legal and won't violate the law, but we're definitely looking to do things in a positive sense.
If I could just add one more thing. In the winter of 2026, 18 months from now, the Army Corps of Engineers is to be pumping sand in Hampton Bays and East Quad. If the profile of our beach is not what it should be, we need to know that. Maybe we can get piggybacked on that equipment when it comes in here in 18 months. But if we wait.
Nobody's
I'm just saying.
Nobody's waiting, right? Let me listen.
So,
I mean,
so what I'm pointing out is that the equipment is gonna be here in 18 months.
Okay.
Okay, and perhaps we have an opportunity to piggyback on that equipment. If the profile of our beach is not what it should be in the rapidly.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Robin, you want to?
Yeah,
I don't know what
Teresa?
the order is, but
Teresa, go ahead. Can you hear me? Yes, we
Yes.
can. So first, Erwin, I have to thank you for the positive things you have done in the village. And Gina, I have to say your enthusiasm is amazing. However, I do not claim to be an expert, but some of the things that are being said are very disjointed. And what I have learned over the past year and a half is coastal geologists cannot get any work done through the DEC. You must have coastal engineers. What I have learned is VHB is probably the best coastal engineer because they've built living shorelines. They have a proven track record and they have amazing people working for them. But just to take a step back, you would probably need to speak to a coastal engineer and allow them to explain to you. Erosion can be mitigated. Flooding cannot. You could never stop the sea from rising in a storm. We can stop erosion. And in the process of stopping erosion, you can maybe raise elevations. You can put sand back, but you can't put sand back unless you have a way to keep it in place. And each of these issues need to be spoken to with, around, and discussed with coastal engineers. And some of the things that are being said tonight, although they sound good, and trust me, I don't do this for a living, but I really had to learn. So the 12 people homes that are in the Village Improvement District, they got together because we needed help and we paid with our own money. And part of the studies that we paid for looks at the entire Bayside because coastal engineers tell you, like VHB, you cannot make a project if you would negatively impact your neighbors. And no coastal engineering company would build a project that would negatively impact neighbors and be sued. So a lot of what's being said is sounding negative, but the right thing to do after learning a year and a half is to get an engineering company like VHB, pay them small amounts, because what I've found from VHB, they do not want to take your money and do studies if they could find with their access to research to help you. What they do is take your money once they've figured out what needs to be built. And from what I've learned, the entire Bayside and West Hampton Dunes, every section needs a different resolution. Some more expensive, some less. I happen to live on the breach. I happen to need more help with erosion. But what's being said in this room, like, you can't just put sand on the bay and expect it to stay there. You can't do it with a coastal geologist because the DEC will not take their recommendations. There's so many things being said at the same time that, and when you want to build on the Bayside, if it's way out in the bay, you're on Southampton's property. You at that point need them to come in and agree to it. So there's so many moving parts to this that I've had to learn over a year and a half, align myself with different people. And I have said 1,000 times over to anyone who's willing to hear me, if my project can help the rest of the bay, which I think it would, because if it's viewed as a pilot project and they see that some grant money went towards this like very innovative project, I think so much more will happen on the Bayside. But I've been working on it for a year and a half because I needed to. I think that we could all benefit from the project. And I also think that more discussions need to open up because Irwin's really going to bat for the Bayside. It seems to be that some of the things that were said is people don't realize how hard he's working for the Bayside. Maybe because I'm paying attention to it, maybe because I've been involved for a year and a half in this, but I don't think that we could move ahead with anything without his guidance, direction, and knowledge. He's an ultra bright person, and he really understands the concept. Some of the things being said here tonight from the board itself, the concepts can't work unless you've educated yourself a little bit further. I want to help the entire Bayside. So I think I've taken up enough time, but a lot of this has to be done only with a coastal engineer, not a coastal geologist. And thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that?
Mary Jane?
Thank you, Robin. I would just like to speak in support of Trustee Mulhern's proposal. I think it's very important. I don't think there's any way to get an overview of the evolution of the geology of the whole area without the collection of data. I am a scientist and a lawyer, and I think from both of those vantage points, it's essential to collect the data. And I think that the best protection that we have in moving forward, either to obtain grants, to hire a coastal engineer, or whatever parameters there are that we want to entertain for our own protection, for the protection of the entire village. And I think that's very clear. I want to address one point that Robin made. I do not think these are distinct issues from what happened 30 years ago on the ocean side and from what's occurring now on the Bayside, all along the Bayside in varying degrees. These are essentially the same issue. The solution 30 years ago was to cede easements over to the state and federal governments in order for refurbishment to occur. That may or may not be necessary now, but we will have no knowledge unless we have the data to support what is going on, what the process of erosion and flooding is that's occurring over time. I think it's essential that we begin immediately to accrue those data. Thank you.
Rob Digia?
No, I think it's my hand being raised, and it's Robert Mayer at 698 Dune Road. Yeah. I just want everybody to remember one thing. I mean, we have a lot of people that are oceanside people with their toys behind the bay homes. And I don't think any of us deny access for them to get to jet skis or kayaks or whatever. So I think it's very important that we work together as a team and do what's best for the bay as well as the ocean. Thank you.
Thanks, Russ.
So, Regina, you're asking the board just to approve doing the study.
It's a very quick down and dirty study. It is just a map of the whole bay side of the village by residential lot. It's a 25-year, how did your property change? So that way we can just get a starting point for a conversation with our residents as to, do you want to do nothing? You want to do something? What do you think about it? Because any of these things that you read, Lon, they start with building community engagement and making sure that if you're going to spend money, that everybody's on board. It saves time in the planning process. People get behind an idea and they understand what's going to happen.
Is that expensive to do a study?
It's $3,600. It's
not
$20 a hole.
Not a study. He's providing some maps of historical data. It's not a study.
Well,
And that's where I think,
okay, well,
I mean, I really wasn't planning on debating this, however, and it's not the money. You don't look for a problem and then find the solution. So in order for us to go to the state or ask them for stuff, we want to know what they want. There's no point in paying for this person to do this particular project until we know it's even necessary. So yes, Regina is interested in getting community input, and I'm very much in favor of getting community input because I think this is why one of the things that we've done since this new board has come about is to try to be as transparent as possible. And I try to post everything on the website. I try to make the minutes there. I try to put the videos up, and I want to be transparent. And if we have work sessions, they should be transparent. And what I would like to do as a next step is actually maybe send out an online survey so people in the village, not just, it's nice that this is our biggest attendance in a while because the weather's nice, but I would like to get input from the people that are physically here and want to remotely as to what their issues and concerns are. And then based upon that, we can work with a comprehensive study or we can work with an engineer or architect. But until we have that, I don't see the point right now. And it's not the dollar amount, because you can take any number, divide it by anything, and statistics can, make it sound. It's just, I'm not sure if this is something we need. And also, before we spend the money on this, there's probably a good chance that the prior administration actually had a lot of this work done by Arams and his firm, and the information might exist. So I want to have at least a chance to research that also. But I think that we should, again, make it easy to send out a survey and let people say what their concerns are, what the issues are on the bay side, if there's any issues on the ocean side. Because as somebody said before, we're one village. It's not us and them. We want to do it. We want to do it all together. Another thing that Regina mentioned earlier about the sand fencing, my opinion is that if you live on the ocean, it's a very de minimis thing. You should pay for your sand fencing. It should be mandatory. I don't think it should be subsidized by people on the bay. Yes, that would save me money, but anything I've done for this village has cost me money. I've never done anything to save me money, and I'm in it with you, and I'm willing to spend my own money. So for somebody that spends, whether it's $500 or $1,000, the sand fencing will last for about 4 years. It's not really that big of an expense. I think it should be mandatory because Quab Village does make it mandatory. I don't think it should come out of that assessment fund. We should raise 300,000 and put 150,000 out of it. I think that other funds should be used for some of the studies that Trustee Mulhern wants to do and possible emergencies.
But you can't, it's public property. The residents don't own that property.
What is public property?
Where the sand
We're allowed to put the sand fencing up.
No, I know we're allowed to put the sand fencing up, but it's public property. So you're saying you want to put into code like Quag, that the homeowners are responsible for paying for the sand fencing.
It's like responsible for cutting their lawn.
I understand, but it's on, you're having this argument of public-private property.
No,
and it's
we're not spending village money on public property. We're private.
Well, that's what I'm recommending.
Spending money on their own.
I think we need to hear from everybody in the village on that, Erwin.
I'm not opposed to hearing from everybody in the village, but again, somebody will be paying it. And I haven't spoken to anybody on the ocean that says, "Oh, I'd love to have this subsidized." So I don't think the whole village has to subsidize that particular thing. However, I feel it is a very important thing to do. I've done it on my own. And I think the way to do it is to basically follow what Quag did make it mandatory, no different than any village. If you don't cut your lawn or your lawn gets a certain height and you don't do it, the village comes in and they cut it for
But
you.
it's not their land. It's public property, so you're gonna make it mandatory for them to put snow fencing on public property?
It'll go on the toe of the dune where their property is. You're getting.
no, you're-
you're getting into the wrong.
Because just
Exactly.
we own property and in a regular neighborhood that has sidewalks, there's the sidewalk and then there's grass on the other side, right before the street. That is actually owned by the municipality, but you have to cut that grass.
You have to
So
repair the
it's very
sidewalk.
different.
You're
But
responsible.
I've been trying to make a point that I think could save us a lot of money. Teresa and the VID have had VHB. When they had to do their studies for what they're gonna do in the plan, they already had to do those engineer reports about the bay. They had to study not just the 12 houses, because obviously the bay is always moving. Can I make a suggestion that we ask Teresa for a copy of her engineer's report as a starting point and see whether, and read it and do an analysis of Teresa's report first and see what is said, and maybe Carlos will then answer some further questions about, we already have a coastal engineer's report to start with before we start paying for another one.
Well,
That's right.
it's not, this other thing was not really a report. It's-
No, I
it's
understand, but we
historical
already
data.
have a report that we can do as a starting point. So that's my suggestion, is to ask Teresa kindly to please share it. And I think that's a great way to start and see, what are they saying about the bay? What are they saying steps are? Because yes, as Teresa said, certain properties need to be handled differently, but at least it's a starting point.
But I think a good starting point, we have a lot of new residents on the bay, people that haven't been here for 25 years. They don't know that they've lost property. I know because I've been here and it's about a foot a year. It's pretty dramatic in different spots. So, and you know what? You go down to this end of the village because of the literal drift moving this way, the sand is backing up and blocking people from their docks. They have a different problem. They have too much sand. It's catching down here. So what I'm proposing is just, it's $20 per house. I mean, you'll get to see your property. You'll see what's happened over 25 years. It's like a starting point for a conversation. It just doesn't seem like it's a far reach to get this
But
done.
you already know the fact that the people have lost, I mean, yes, I know it's nice to have a visualization, but you already know the fact that people have
Could we
lost.
just add it
lost
as a
their property.
resolution? It's not a lot of money, and I think it will provide some good information. And I don't see the downside to doing it. I think we should add it as a resolution. That's my opinion.
Okay, my opinion was, I think it's premature, or I would have put it on the agenda. If there are 3 people that wanna.
Can I just say, there's a bunch of us who weren't called that have our hands raised for
You're-
Yeah,
10
and
minutes.
Bill, I
Sorry,
said a lot. You're in line.
Yes. Please. who's
Okay,
next?
Rob has been waiting. Rob, did you? Here,
Did you?
okay.
Okay. Regina, thank you for the work that you've done. We won't solve the world's problems, on this call, but I do think we all need to work together and realize that this is an incredibly important, issue to people who live on the bayside and the ocean side, because the property values don't go up when there's erosion. I've lived in my house for 9 years and I've lost 8 to 10 feet at the last, measurement. The problem is real. It impacts property values. It's not good for any one of us. So we can debate, a whole lot of, and I don't know how we got on the topic of snow fencing on the ocean side, but fine. We've just got to figure out what to do as a community. And you went through a lot, Regina. I'd like to learn more about what you proposed, but I'll send you a check for my $20. It's crazy. It's crazy. We're debating stuff that is irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Let's figure out how to solve this problem before the property values go down for all of us. I mean, we've got to figure this out. And Regina, you were very comprehensive in what you went through. It may not be the perfect answer. I'd love to know what WHB on-call contract is for and what it does, and how we can utilize the work, Teresa, that your VID has done for the benefit, of the entire Bayside. So we got to figure this out in a less confrontational way. And it's in everyone's best interest because nobody's property value is going to go up when they're losing 8 to 10 feet, of, property, so I'm frustrated. Thank you.
Erwin, can I ask a question?
Can-
Just
Lauren? She's come. You've done, okay.
Sorry. No, I'm sorry. Actually, I've been out of the loop for a while with all the with the bay erosion. I wasn't aware of it. And I'm happy to put $20 in to do this little experiment. Sorry. But I will say that I don't think, being in this village for over 50 years, I've seen the ebbs and flows on both sides. I'm not saying that nothing's happening now, that I'm losing 8 to 10 feet per house. I have no idea about that. I didn't really know about that, to be honest. I will tell you that my house, 743, there's been years we have had 2 feet from the crest of the dune to the water through the entire month of June, going back about 20 years ago. It was about 2 or 3 years there. It was, I would call every day saying, we're going to lose our house if a storm comes through, because there was absolutely no beach. And it comes and goes. So I don't know if we're in a come and go phase with the Bayside with all these issues you're all saying you're getting. I don't know. But I do know that, I mean, the coast has been the coast over there for the past 50 years. And if it's 8 and 10, do we get some years? Do we get other years? I don't think it has to do with the climate. I think it has to do with the fact that maybe the topography has changed with all the building going on, possibly. I don't know. But so I'm happy to contribute to this fund that they're talking about, but I don't think that we should be spending tens of thousands of dollars to hire consultants to look into climate change to see if that's the reason why our bay is losing 10 or 8 or 4 feet, or the ocean's losing 10 or 8 feet. Because this year I heard there's no beach in front of our house again for some reason. So it happens. I find it grows back. I found that putting snow fencing in on the property which is from top of my dunes, and also going toward the beach, which I'm not sure it's my property, but for the past, I think 5 or 6 years, I have put snow fencing in religiously, and it has made a tremendous difference in the protection of our beach. So I really highly encourage any people who are in the ocean. It's like $1,000 every year we do it. And if you come see our house now, I wish I had a picture of it 5 years ago. It is huge difference in the fact that it grows exponentially high. So I'm putting it on the property from top by dunes and also down by the bottom by the water, which has luckily not got washed away this year. But it's worth the money. So I don't think we have to make people do it, but I think they should want to do it, because it really does help. That's all. I just didn't know about the problem on the bay. I just wanted to say my 2 cents, saying that I agree with what Erwin was saying, that I think that they've been dealing with this. I think the previous administration did a really good job with keeping all of that stuff pretty much on their front burner, and they've always looked into it. And maybe we can, go back and see what they've done in the past 35 years. They have a lot of information.
Okay, Chad?
Thank you. I love the passion that everybody has for this, and I think it's really great. And I think that all the issues brought up regarding the issues of private property versus public property and concerns related to that are real. But I think what Gina's proposing is fantastic, because we do need to have data, and that's something we don't currently have. And especially, as you alluded to, that the RAF agreement is coming in sort of towards its end of its term. There's major technological changes in the ability to acquire topography, since 30 years ago when the village was formed. And it's much less expensive, as you indicated, to do LiDAR with drones and things like that. And there's really no reason that a village that is 100% exposed like ours, that is water on all sides, and is subject to, you don't have to get into the politics of global warming or climate change or any of that. It's just is what it is. The wind is enough to damage our properties, the tides moving back and forth. And that's the top priority of this village. Period. End of story. It should be part of the annual budget. Because as we go forward, we advocate for ourselves. That's the only reason this village exists. If we didn't want to advocate for ourselves, we could just be unincorporated and part of the town of Southampton and see how that works out. So the only way we can advocate for ourselves is to have the data to do so. And doing it in a piecemeal fashion, lot by lot, is it's just not efficient. You know, it works. We'll do that. You know, as I've spoken here before, we've constructed shoreline, natural shoreline, you know, hardening structures like revetments and other features on other properties in West Hampton Beach and on Dune Road. And they're not the most efficient way to do it, one property at a time. And 100% going through DEC is a headache. And every property is slightly different. And so if for $3,600, I'm not sure, I didn't catch who was suggested as the vendor for that. I do think that VHB is a well-respected firm that we've worked with and has in other municipalities where we've been applicant. They are a well-respected engineering firm that works for many villages, and they're working on the vid, so they have already a lot of knowledge about our village. I think that probably if they're not looking at, I would say what is being proposed is a good idea, but I think it would make sense to keep it in that shop because they're already pending on that. But whether it's $3,500 or $35,000, it's really this is more important than adjusting the street signs or pretty much any other thing the village could undertake. Would be to understand the shoreline issues and to say that the bayside erosion is a bayside problem because it's private property is to just completely be short-sighted because you know you have enough erosion to cause damage through erosion over time that causes ground inundation then makes so okay the bayside houses fall into the bay and now you only have one house on one side of the street and then where's the water going to go? It's going to go down to East Quogue and Hampton Bays on Union Road where you can't drive down the road at the high tide. And that's what happens when you don't manage the shoreline on the bayside. So that affects the ocean tide equally to the base. And not to mention that just like sheer number of properties, there are more bayside properties than there are oceanside properties. So I don't understand why that wouldn't be more than the majority of the village residents affected by this to make this a village issue that's village wide. And I think the village attorney spoke well to the fact that you need to tread slowly on this and just first get the information that you need and get experts involved to sort of size up the problem so that some solutions can, start to be envisioned. And I'd be happy to be a part of the proposed committee or the residents that are concerned about this to be involved in this in any way we can. It's very close to our heart as owning, 4 Bayfront properties. And thank you for all your work on this.
Luke.
Yeah, thank you so much. I promise I'll be brief. I know we're running over here. I just want to say I know Teresa made a really interesting point about, whether this is the right person, whether we're talking to the engineer versus the designer. I think the important thing is I love to see that you guys, the trustees and the mayor, that you guys are working and being proactive about trying to develop a plan. I really like Chad's point too about that. We've all seen down there in Hampton Bays where you're driving through the water half the summer, and it is a real thing. We need to be aggressive about it. And whether it's this person or someone else, I love the idea of trying to develop a plan, get the information we need, and think long term about it. So whether it's this 3,600 or more money or less money down the line, or working with the Water Authority or with Southampton, I like the idea of being aggressive, being long term. And snow fencing, we do it every year, so who knows if it's whatever it is, we probably make sense.
Thanks.
I know, Regina, when you walked out to the back of my property, you said, "Let me show you where your property used to go to."
Yeah.
That was like an eye opener because I was like, "Is that beach going to go away?" And you said, "Well, let me just show you how far it has gone away." So showing that to people is a good thing, I think, to get awareness. And it was, for me, it was an eye opener. You two were talking like 20 feet because you've been here so long. You knew where that beach was. And you could say to me, this is where it is now, but that's not where it was 20 years ago.
Right. It's also, it's just shifting. It's in different shapes in different parts of the village. It's not all erosion. It's pile up in some places, it's erosion in others. But I just think, we just need to know that,
Okay.
Let's see, two more.
All right, the last two questions, please.
Gary,
As well.
I got two.
Oh.
Gary,
Thank you. I'm Gary Vigliante, 798 Dune Road. I just want to clear up some of the issues that are very simply institutional knowledge. First and foremost, the lawyer is exactly correct. Expending public funds on private property is just completely unavailable to us, and it's illegal. However, a global problem of erosion on both the bay and the ocean side could be poised as a vehicle to allow some of that to happen. The other thing is, I want to clear up one issue about the RAP settlement. The RAP settlement expired as soon as FIMP was adopted. In the settlement papers, which are voluminous, and although I've lived them, it clearly states that the RAP settlement would proceed for 30 years or at the institution of Fire Island to Montauk Point. So there is no RAP settlement any longer. That's a very important issue. The fact is, I was very disappointed, and I have to be frank. I was very disappointed with the amount of sand or lack thereof of sand in this last renourishment. This was the first renourishment after the RAP settlement, and we got virtually nearly nothing. We barely made it into the village by 10 houses. They accommodated us with about 80 or 90,000 cubic yards, which was less than a tenth of what we would get under the normal agreements. We need to be proactive, understand what's about to come down the road, work towards it. We can't let another project like this one, which may happen in 4 or 5 years, to come and go with us being lost in the shuffle. So I commend Trustee Regina for the work she's done. We need to look at this, and clearly we're a very fragile island. We need to work as a team and get something in place. But some of that information, Regina, may be available by our past consultants. I could see what I could do to get a hold of it.
That'd be great, Gary.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
But
Yeah,
let's
that's a lot
remember,
of money.
yeah, let's see if we can save money somewhere and do it the right way so that we don't have a problem later on.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Teresa, are you talking again? Maybe she's done. Okay.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say, Gina, most of the information that you're looking for, you really shouldn't pay. It's for free out on the internet. I have some of it. I am sure Gary Vigilante could get you all of it. And you really shouldn't be paying for it. And anything that's paid, I can't impress upon you enough, should go through a coastal engineer like VHB with a proven track record that the DEC looks favorable upon. We're all in agreement that things have to be looked in, but to be so disjointed when there's so many people in the room that have gone through this for over a year and a half, speak to everyone. Don't just give the money away. It's not worth it. Half of what you want, actually 92% of what you've looked for is for free on the internet. If not, Gary, I'm sure has it. I have it. You really should be saving the money for a coastal engineer. We're all on the same page. We all want the same thing, but to just spend the money all disjointedly makes no sense.
So there's two different things that, Teresa, there are coastal geologists which study the big picture. They go back 100 years.
Coastal engineers, listen to me, Gina, coastal engineers have all that. They have all that. The coastal geologists aren't looked upon favorably when you need to get something through the DEC.
You start with a coastal geologist. Look, I've talked to several different firms. I talked to CSE. I talked to Woods Hole Group. I spoke to InterScience, spoken with VHB. All of these guys, there's different functions. They hire out specialists in different areas. So the coastal geologist does the big study. It goes back and it looks 100 years in time. If you want to see what that looks like, you can look at Bridgehampton.
That information.
Okay,
on the internet.
All right, just Teresa, let me finish, please. Okay, so the coastal geologists, they take that information and an engineer takes that information and then they start to apply it and say, okay, here are the coastal processes that are creating this situation. So how are we going to use that information to design a solution? And then Those firms specialize in grant funding as well as working with the permitting. So yes, you have to have an engineer. I'm just talking big picture first.
But Gina, big picture, I'm just being honest with you. I'm doing it for a while. It's not my living, but after looking into it, big picture is coastal engineers have those on their teams. And that information is at their fingertips for free. A geologist will charge you, and that information cannot be used at an engineering company. But if you hire an engineering company, my experience, they have it for free. It's out on the internet. They have access to everything, the heartbeat of the ocean. Take it for free. And then the coastal engineer does exactly what you said. We're saying the same thing and we're all on the same page, but you seem to want to take a direction of executing that isn't 100% in the well-being of the village. That will take you forever. And then you'll pay so much money. But a coastal engineering company has those people on staff, and that information is in their database for free. They're not going to charge you for it. I mean, we're all on the same page. Why would I mislead you? I live on the Bayside. I'm trying to tell you that don't take that step that will take you years and you'll be misled and pay for it. Go directly to an engineering company who has those people on their team and that free information at their fingertips. We're on the same side. I live on the Bayside.
I think we are all on the same side and we're all working for the same goals for the village. And I think the best way to move this forward is I'd like to, maybe there's a lot of people passionate about it and totally understand, especially some of you have had tremendous amount of erosion in your backyard. So maybe Regina and I can work with you in a subcommittee of, half a dozen, 12, 10 residents, whatever it is. And we can all kind of have separate meetings, which we can make available to the public as a work session, and we can do, whatever's expedient and work on this problem together. But I think we just need to have a direction before we start hiring people to do stuff.
It was just a starting point, Erwin.
Okay, so if there's nobody else's hands up, I'm sorry, John, after your hand is up, I apologize. After John, I would like.
Not on the screen, but here at the table.
Okay.
This erosion control coastal management project that now is sunsetting, meaning the agreement. I don't remember.
John F is actually speaking. Oops.
I'm sorry. Hi. I don't remember a time, and I think I'm one of I hate to say the oldest resident, but our family is like a founding family in this community, in the F family. And there's been others, the Barnes family, there's a number of families that are founding members. But we have been in this erosion control mode for as long as I can. I don't remember when we haven't been. Now, we're coming to the end, or we were told by Gary, the end is there, meaning it's gone. Does the Army Corps of Engineers and others that support and have worked with us over many years, do they put some kind of a final, let's say, document out that kind of is like, this is what we've done, this is what we've learned, and this is what we recommend in the future? I mean, it seems to me we've gotten a lot of benefit. We've spent some money to get some of those benefits, but you're right. You need the expertise of coastal knowledge to be able to take us to the next step. And really, that's where the expertise really comes in. And I mean, I would think that after all these years, I mean, sure, it's great to get the renourishment and that's a tactical thing that happened every X number of years. But it's like, all right, let's step back and what have we gotten for this? And what do the experts recommend where we need to go? They know there's a problem on the, over on the bay. I mean, it's commonly known. but you need informed guidance to put a plan together. Now, and it's great that the community, we've always been a community that's sought out the answers, and we're not shy about that. But I think various people have said, let's do it the right way and let's capitalize. As Teresa said, a lot of the information is out there and available. We need the right resource to cultivate and get that information for us so that we can make the right decisions moving forward. I mean, this is a survival of a community, everybody. I don't know, many of you are newer here. You weren't here when the first dredge pipe went in on the ocean. I was there. I was there. It was probably in my early 20s at the time when a lot of this stuff started to take hold. And it's because of the hard work of the people. I'm not saying any one person in particular, but it's like all of a sudden now it drops off the end of the earth, but we still have a problem. It's just, and we've got to track the problem and deal with it as things have changed. Sorry, I don't mean, I'm talking like a teacher now.
No, I'm sorry, don't.
No, I don't mean, sorry.
You jump.
Don't worry.
Okay.
I've said what I had.
Okay.
So, anyway, next, the financial report, I'm glad to say that we finished the 23-24 audit. Between the 22 and the 23 audit, we added the GASB 75 information, which basically was required by us to do, that provides the village with what the future liabilities are for certain pensions and other obligations. There's one other thing in this audit that wasn't done yet, which is basically having somebody appraise some of the village assets. The village doesn't really have that many assets. It's it's really the constabulary and it's the our vehicles, but also we're told we might have to have an appraisal on the road. Just for a valuation standpoint, once we do that, we'll be in total compliance. We won't have a minor negative thing. So we are planning on moving that forward. I'm working with Liz on that. Also just want to remind everybody that our tax bills are going out. They're due July 1st. However, if you could pay them early, that would help. But again, they're due July 1st, so I'd rather you pay them early than you pay them late and have a penalty. Next, we're gonna have the constable's report. So Brian, you want to what? Brian,
Yeah,
Brian, come up. You gotta come over here. You gotta be on that. Yeah, why don't you maybe grab a chair, sit next to Robin or something, or we want to sit here?
That's fine. So we're gonna be brief because we've gone a little bit longer here, but so today we had a fire alarm at a house because they were power washing and basically the water kind of did a drag on the fire suppression. I thought the fire alarm went off. But we've had this happen a lot with people getting their houses painted, sheetrock sanding, floor sanding. If you're gonna do these types of things, you could put your alarm in test. So this way the alarm won't send a signal to the fire department so they don't have to come out. So that'd be a little bit beneficial. I know Erwin has here on the agenda, updating the keys. We don't want people's door codes, but we do have a key box that's in our building that only we have access to. So if there is an emergency, there was a fire alarm at someone's house at 2 in, and the fire department often has to go inside to confirm there's not a fire. And we really don't want them to break your doors or your windows. And they don't do it intentionally, but it seems like they're always the most expensive way to get in, gets damaged. So you want to provide us a key, but if you do have a door code, we will call you to try to get a door code from you. We don't want to keep a list of people's door codes. But, as Erwin also mentioned with the alarm permit, that is essentially one of the main components of that is the contact information. It's very frustrating for us when there is something that happens at your home and we can't get to you. You can even give us alternate contacts. So if you're not available, we can contact somebody else. And that's pretty much it, unless anyone has any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
If you put your alarm on the system 5 years ago, you still have all the information. You don't have to repeatedly do that.
This is a newer thing that the village just instituted. It's an alarm permit. So this is a little bit different.
So maybe I better call.
Yeah, no, I think it's available on the website.
It
So
is.
so it's available online. There was also a link to it to the email that sent out, reminding everybody about the meeting. So or it's on the website, and the website's very searchable. You just type in alarm, you get the permit. And we really wanna have the information to protect you. I mean, it's just a way for us to administer it, and also, we wanna try to avoid, the false alarms, which we have a lot of. Okay? Thank
And
you.
if anyone has any other questions, hope everybody enjoyed this beautiful day. It was definitely a really nice day.
All right, now we can move on to resolutions. We want to
Resolution approving each of the claim vouchers submitted for audit and approval by the Board of Trustees.
Second,
All those in favor? Howard?
resolution waiving the reading of and approving the minutes of April 10th, 2025 Board of Trustees meeting.
Second. All those in favor?
Resolution of the Board of Trustees to appoint Kaylee Gordon and Andrea Lipari to serve as election inspectors for the village election to be held on Friday, June 20th, 2025, and will be compensated at a rate of $200 for their day of service.
Second,
All those
Favor?
in favor?
Aye.
John?
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes Mayor Krasner to attend the New York Conference of Mayors Annual Executive Meeting and Training School from May 28th to May 30th, 25.
second,
All those in favor?
Aye. Resolution from the Village of West Hampton Dunes to enter a contract of $3,500 with Ultimate Hunter, Inc. to remove the dead birds from our public beaches.
All those in favor?
so on the next resolution,
Okay, yes, so.
Isn't that spending public money on private property? I mean,
No, we're
well,
trying-
because,
we're
but
trying
isn't
to
the
get-
bid private property?
This is not.
It's
this is
grant
not
funding
intended
for
to get-
private property, right?
No, it's to get grants for the village to do the studies that you just said you'd like to do. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. So what you suggested you wanted to do earlier, I'm trying to have a way again, which I mentioned
Well, we need
earlier
to,
through
well, we don't have any information.
climate smart community and for coastal resiliency.
Right,
Yes.
there's a lot of,
Except
there's a lot of programs that are out there, Erwin, but you know what, we need to have 3 bids.
Regina, we don't, listen, my opinion is that since this is due June 6th. And again, you were talking about spending $3,600, which was $20 a resident, so I'm talking about spending up to a cap of $5,000, which is okay. $50, whatever it is, $50 a home, or $100.
But there are other contenders for this. There are
There-
several different
there are-
competing firms, Erwin, that we should
This is-
interview for
okay,
this.
This is due June 6th. If you want to pass on getting grants for the village,
But Erwin, they're in the very, it's unrealistic. Well, look, I want the people in the
And we're not
village to get all the help
and
they
we're
can
not
get,
necess-
but they're in a preliminary phase. You need to have a completed, if you read through that form, which I have, where you apply for these grants, you need to have a completed approved project. Even if it is a deadline, they're in the preliminary phase. They haven't even gotten approval.
Except that
But
we
you're not
do-
gonna get it.
Except that by leveraging all the money that the bid spent to move their project forward, that can be used with the state as a prototype to help the village get some more money. And again, maybe we won't even be spending this money, but I was just suggesting that we put aside $5,000 that we can hire them if we have something that we feel is worthwhile. I already spent like 45 minutes on the phone with them the other day to get the village some grants.
so we're
And
not.
grants for
gonna-
what you're doing.
So we're gonna change
This
it.
has nothing to do
So-
with these surveys that you were
So will
talking
the
about.
resolution be limited to up to $5,000? Is that what we're saying?
That's what I was
Okay, so
planning on.
modify it.
That's what I was going to say, but Regina asked me a question. So, and again, because it's time sensitive is the only reason I'm suggesting that we do this. And
just
it
feel-
doesn't mean we'll even spend it, but I want to have the option.
I just feel that there are more firms. I introduced a firm to you, InterScience, that was
InterScience
recommended,
is
but
not doing this part for us. InterScience wants to provide us historical data.
no,
of
no,
the
you didn't,
erosion.
no. They,
I read
that
the
is that
proposal from-
that is the beginning point. InterScience works with the Southampton trustees, the Village of Greenport. They do all of the planning. They're a fantastic company that is located in Southampton, has been here for 40 years, has an excellent reputation. Brian Stoller said so much when we were on call, and you sent us this information I got it at 2:40 this afternoon. We haven't had an opportunity to vet other candidates, and you're going to spend $5,000 on something we haven't had a chance to look at different agencies. I know that there's a time crunch on this, but we have to start someplace, and I don't want to be relegated to VHB, which is headquartered up in Massachusetts and has 2,000 people, where we could be working with maybe a firm that worked with all of our local regulators.
They're headquartered in New York City, I'm sorry.
You know, they
No,
spend
they're
a
in
lot of
Massachusetts.
time and they're familiar with the village, and that's why, again, I don't work for them, work with them. I just felt that at this point in time, it was a prudent thing for the village to do. If
I just want to point out, I've had to deal with InterScience in the past, and their perspective of our village is that it's a redheaded stepchild geologically to the rest of the Barrier Beach system because it's restored. I've been on the phone with him this winter. It's a 2 or 3 person small outfit in Southampton. VHB, I'm sorry, Gina, I'm not trying to disagree with you, but VHB is a super well regarded firm that works on behalf of, I can't even count the municipalities on Long Island, in New York City. They write these coastal management reports for everybody. And grant writing, I sit on multiple boards where I've taken over $1 million in the past 2 years from New York State, Department of Homeland Security, and other New York State through grants for not-for-profits that I'm involved with on the board. And we have a firm just like VHB that does that for security purposes. And they write these grants for a business. That's what they do all day long. Grant writers are their own kind of thing, and that's what these large shops do. InterScience is not that. I'm not saying they're not great for doing the aerials, but they're not that for grants.
I know, I understand. Every firm can do different things, but to expect us to vote on picking an engineering consulting firm with only a couple of hours notice and no vetting and no comparison just
Gina,
seems.
this was sent to you Tuesday, so.
No, I got it.
If you didn't read the agenda on
I
Tuesday,
read, yeah,
it was there. And if.
Yes, but you only sent the information that was the backup at 2:40 this afternoon.
No, that wasn't that was just sharing something else in reference.
No,
to
but
me.
that
It
had,
was in
that had,
reference to
that
this.
had, no, it was with it was Carlos's letter. I was in the meeting with, look, I'm speaking factually, I can give it to you. I just don't think we should be voting on something that we haven't had a chance to read and review.
Gina, you don't have to vote on it if you don't want to.
Hi, excuse me, can I say something for 1 second, please?
You can not vote on it.
Hello? Hi, this is Sarah Covelli, 929 Dune Road. I write environmental grants for a living. That's how I make my money. I'm not offering my services here. What I'm simply saying is that the way that these consulting firms work, no matter which it is, whether it's Gina's or otherwise, they, like Teresa said, have access to all of this information. Before we can move forward with a plan or whatever, why don't we at least give VHB the chance through the village, designating these funds? Why don't we at least give the chance for VHB to provide to the village all of the information that they have gathered thus far, and then go from there? I mean,
I don't see the rush, Sarah. I know you and your father and your mother all want to go with VHB. I understand that, but I just think we're a board where we have to evaluate. We should be getting 3 bids from 3 different companies. We should be laying out what their skill sets are and how they can best benefit. What are their connections? What are their success stories out here?
Excuse me. I'm an individual, and what I was trying to get across here is that there has been, to this point, some information gathering, an exercise that was already completed. Why don't we get that information?
Good idea.
And then we can take that information and use that to hire other firms. It doesn't need to be that one, but the point is that a firm was here. A firm was here in the village. A firm was here in the village doing this exact work already. Why not see what they produced? Please just let us get our hands on it.
Yeah, I have been with VHB from the very beginning, when we first started it. And I mean, maybe not everybody here is not.
No, we're not.
So, but I mean, it's such a minuscule thing. Let's try it and let's see what they do.
So.
So this $5,000 and that 3,600 are two different things.
Well, the best practice
Jared,
to
what-
obtain quotes.
I'm confused though. I thought that we all had.
Hello.
Sarah, mute her so you can talk. Go ahead, Jared.
Well, it's the best practice to obtain multiple bids so that it's a competitively bid project. With professional services, which this is, you're seeking VHP for the limited purposes, as I read this resolution, it's for the limited purpose of applying for a grant that is due June 6th. So
Okay.
given the time constraints, the not to exceed amount of $5,000, which I believe is below the procurement threshold, the village's procurement threshold, I don't see a problem with you selecting this
Right.
vendor.
So
if that's what
let's
you want
just
to do.
change it to not to exceed 5,000.
That's what I.
And then we don't
that's
have to
what-
do it.
that- I already
Let's-
said
let's
that.
move on.
But Gina was.
We can get a picture
opposed
a little bit.
You have a
about
new
it.
resolution.
Just call for a vote of the board.
I understand.
That's it.
Do you have a
We have
new
all
resolution, or do you want to read it?
Well,
Brian?
it's just the resolution for the Village of West Hampton News Center into an on-call contract with VHB Engineering to help the village secure some available grants from New York State, not to exceed $5,000.
Okay.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, anybody,
You're not-
are you opposed?
No,
You did not vote. Okay.
no, I'm saying an A, no. it
Yeah,
would be a
right,
nay.
right,
You're
right.
opposed?
Yes,
Okay. After you said all that about helping the bay.
no,
I find it very ironic,
No, but-
Peter, I'm
no,
sorry, but.
no,
Oh,
it's,
come on.
now that's just procedural, Erwin,
Okay.
you've
Okay.
dropped,
Putting
you've
this
got
all out
some
there.
information, you've put information, you know, we're supposed to be informed when we make decisions, that's our fiduciary responsibility. I haven't, you know, we had one exposure, I had two exposures to VHB, one where we, early on, Howard and I met with them for the road flooding issue down here, and we got a very expensive bid back from them before they started any work.
And I fixed
And
the
then we
road
have-
flooding for free, so maybe.
I know,
It saved the village hundreds of thousands,
okay,
so maybe you should
wonderful,
trust my judgment.
but the thing is that on this thing, we only got the information I got the information at 2:40 this afternoon. I don't think it's fair that we have to vote on it. That's my objection.
Okay.
It isn't the objection. I want to help Teresa out. I've been talking to her constantly for the last year. I want the Bayside to be held, you know, but I think that it's unrealistic to think you're going to get grant funding on June 6th with a very preliminary project. As you can, it has not been reviewed by the DEC, has not been approved by the Southampton trustees. They haven't even seen the permit yet.
Gina, it's been reviewed by all the agencies and I'm meeting
Hasn't.
with Southampton. It has. Why would I lie to you?
I spoke with Scott Horowitz this afternoon to ask him
So
about it.
you think that
And
I
I request, well, he's the president of the
wait, so you
trustees.
think that I didn't go before the DE?
Okay.
Let's
I'm
move on
moving.
to
So we go to the next.
Resolution
We go to the
7.
next resolution.
Resolution for the Village of West Hampton Dunes to enter into an agreement with Suffolk County Water Authority to split the cost of rebuilding the catwalk out to the bay and installing kayak paddleboard racks on the property not to exceed 20,000.
All those in favor? Well, it's about $34,000 to do the work. It has to be prevailing wage. Which again, as I explained earlier, the Suffolk County Water Authority is splitting that with us. So they're actually paying for half of it, which is very generous of them. So we're just paying for half. So that's why, and I put some money in the budget to cover the building and installation of the kayak rack so that area will be nice and clean behind your house. Happen to be here, and that's really the plan. So that's where this budget came from. Okay, now, even though I think we've had it all meeting, it's time for public comments, and we just suggest that anybody who didn't speak before should have a chance to speak first, and then anybody who spoke earlier, if they want to add anything, just to be fair to the audience. So is there anybody has their hands up and wants to discuss things we haven't discussed?
Yeah.
You have to say who you are and your job.
I just need a clarification. I have heard a rumor and have had phone calls, etc., that the board has applied to whatever federal agency is necessary to get the right as a village to impose a tax on rental income for owners in the village. Is that true?
The board passed a resolution to ask, there is a tax on rental on anybody who rents for less than 30 days. That's the county and the state are already charging the tax.
That's the
Not-
county and state.
Yeah,
I'm
not,
asking
yes,
if
let
the
me,
village
yes,
goes
yes. NICOM, which is one of the organizations that I belong to, which is the New York Conference of Mayors, suggested that since this tax is available to villages, and since we already had a rental program in, that we should apply for it. So what we did at a previous meeting is we passed a resolution that Senator Palumbo and Assemblyman Schiavone asked us to do first. And then the state is looking at basically putting us on the legislative calendar to approve it. If this happens, it might be this June, it might not, it might be signed by the governor for in December, and it might possibly go into effect if the board decides to move forward next year, and the tax is not on the people that are doing the renting. It's no different than when you go to a hotel. It's a hotel and occupancy tax. You go to New York City, you go to a hotel, there's a 25% tax on your room rate. But this tax will be paid by the transient visitors to the village and not a tax on our residents. But again, it's a long way off, and we just started the first step of the process on the recommendation of NICOM. Well,
That didn't sound like a little way.
that's the state hasn't even approved their budget, so this might not even make it on, and the state legislators leave in June. This might not even make it on the calendar this year. It might be on the calendar June of 26, which then means it might not be till the summer of 27. And it doesn't mean that we will necessarily do it, but in order to protect ourselves, we approve this.
How do you protect yourself? I don't understand.
That we have the option if we want to be able to collect that revenue. But again, it's not a tax on any of our residents, it's a tax on the tenants, no different than anytime you
The
go.
effects of the ability, but the price.
Well, when people get a hotel room, they don't say, oh, they quote the price of the hotel, they don't tell you the tax until you go to check out of the hotel.
In the town have been renting to the same people for years upon years. And those people will find it shocking and want to have some kind of adjustment in the rent.
Right, but right now, your tenants are gonna be paying 14% tax. So if the village added, if we added 1%, I don't think that will make that much difference, but right now, all your tenants have to pay about 14% tax.
Not about these things through a rumor.
But it's not a rumor, it was done in a public meeting, and it was shared, and it's on the video, it's not a rumor, and it was done in the public.
There's no notification, in other words, unless you
There-
look
there
at
wa- there-
all the minutes
well-
of all the meetings.
Well, no, there was a notification, it was in the agenda.
Barbara, I think it's my understanding, and this way Irwin's explained it to me, this is up at New York State level. We have not made that decision in the village yet. We get to vote on that again. So it's not a fait accompli. It is something that Irwin was asked to do to support the legislature in meetings. So he asked us to support him, and we did. But it was my understanding, and I'm correct on this, aren't I, Irwin, that
Well,
we're
no,
not,
no,
we have not passed this for our village.
Well,
We have the ability to do it, but we have not done it.
we did a resolution that we could do this, and now we had it, you have it a little bit backwards. The state didn't ask me to do it. NICOM suggested it's an opportunity as a revenue for the village without short taxing your residents. I know Barbara said she looks at it differently, but taxing basically the transient people that stay here. So all we did was pass a resolution which the Senator Palumbo asked us to do ahead of time before he would take it to the state legislature. The state legislature, and if you want to put red light cameras in a village, which we're not doing, I'm not want to scare anybody, but any types of taxable laws, you have to go to your state assembly person and senator to have put it as a bill in Albany to get passed. So this was the first part of this process.
So that doesn't mean we've passed it, we still have to vote, that's how I understood it.
We would have to vote on it, once the state approves it, we would have to vote on an amount, whether it's zero or
So we could.
X percent or not do it, yes.
That's the way it's.
Yes.
In other words, you're saying the board approved it, but whether it's 0 or whether it's 1% or whatever.
We would re-vote on it, and it would,
But
again,
it
be.
has been approved that you would have
No,
that.
No,
The amount
well,
is not.
you wanna
I
explain
think,
it?
I think
I'm not explaining
what
correctly?
happened is NICOM suggested that the village send what's known as a home rule message to through the local elected state officials, saying that this is something that we'd like state legislation to be passed. If the state passes that legislation, it will enable villages like the village of West Hampton students to use this as another revenue generating
Right,
mechanism.
enable, but what
You
I'm
have
asking
to
you.
opt into that law.
I don't want to interrupt. I understand that part of it. And what I'm asking you, did you already pass the board's right to enact this if it is approved?
No, it doesn't sound like it's been, the law has been approved by the state for the village to opt in.
But I'm saying if the law is approved by the state, does the village then again have to vote
That's what I'm
whether they
saying.
want to enact it or not?
That's what I'm
Yes.
saying. It sounds like this is an opt-in legislation. You
Yes.
have to opt in at a later date
That's-
after the legislation.
That's correct.
passed.
That's my understanding too, Barbara.
Me too.
Okay, that's not what I heard the mayor say. It sounds like he said that they approved it if the state allows it.
We approved it, well, the state does allow it, the state does allow it, but in order for it to be allowed in our village, it has to be any tax. Like I said, red light cameras, speed camera, any of those types of taxes, I know Southampton and East Hampton, Southampton Village and East Hampton Village are working on one, has to go through the state legislature to get approved before then the local municipality can enact it. So we just did the first step.
Special state legislation is called.
We just did the first step, and again,
So you could not enact it if the state approved it until you voted again.
Right.
Is that correct? I'd like
Is
to hear
that correct?
those two.
Setting the amounts, yeah, you'd have to set.
setting the amounts, yes, we
would
have
It is
we would
approved
have the
exactly
law,
that,
that's why I said it could
But it
be
could be
zero,
zero.
it could be zero if we do nothing, it could be up to, I think the range was from 1% to 5%. But again, and this will all be, listen, I make sure that I send out the agendas, I make sure that we send out the meeting notices, even though the meetings are posted. So this is nothing that would be done, you know, in the secret of night.
Well, you send out the agendas via email where you have to click on to see the agendas.
That was only on this particular meeting because we actually were able to add that link. The agenda, when I usually send out the notice, the agenda is on the website. And again, we have this brand new website, which makes it a lot easier than the old website. Like I
I
said,
just want to know that residents will have input before it is enacted.
absolutely. Some residents have already reached out to me, not at a public meeting, and discussed them already. And I've discussed it with them, and they said, there's a lot of taxes right now, but again, this is something that it gives us an option in the future. Remember, we didn't raise taxes this year. We kept our taxes flat. We're not trying to hit the residents with more fees. And that's why this also, to me, was an opportunity that, again, could be paid by a transient renter as opposed to the resident increasing their real estate taxes, which would be a permanent thing. Sure.
Totally different subject,
Sure.
real quick one, you'll love it. I know you're gonna have the streets swept, okay? I spent a lot of time walking down the road is gonna need maintenance.
Well,
There's a lot of cracks.
John has already had, coincidentally, the same contractor, Rosemere, that the county hired to do the work, was here last week. And John has been working with them on the road. We've already started that process. I just had so much to discuss tonight, but
Yeah.
I don't want you to bring it up. So we were actually working on that, and we also reached out to, again, the state to see how we can use the CHIPS fund to, again, help us pay for some of those repairs without coming out of our budget. So we are addressing that issue. I walk the road every day. I walk the whole village. I walk every street. So I'm very familiar, and
All those cracks.
I'm very familiar, and yes, it seems like they're more on the bay side actually than they. Well, again, just nothing to do with just for whatever reason. But then again, maybe because the bay side is where there's an easy place, a safe place to walk. So I spend more time, but it seems to be more on the bay side with the driveways and everything else there.
There's some people.
All right, yeah.
Sure.
I have Nani.
Oh, hi. Thank you very much, Robin. I just wanted to ask, Mayor, if when they are doing the walkway, which I think is really great that you're doing, can they please also deal with the extensive amount of ticks and poison ivy along the walkway?
I don't I don't know who would deal with that, Monty. I mean, you know, I'm not even sure. You're talking about the walkway in this Suffolk County Water Authority?
Yeah, the one across from the McGinty's house.
Yes, we'd have to look into that again. I'm not sure.
Just right, there's a huge amount of poison ivy in there.
Roke Landscaping does that. They will remove the poison ivy and also the tick, so I don't know if that's something we want to get involved with.
But it's not I mean, it's kind of a weird situation. It's not our property. They're allowing us to use this. I don't know. Do you have
Well, if somehow you could do spraying for ticks or something, I mean, I don't do that walkway anymore because I've become covered with ticks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Pat Byrne?
Mr. Mayor, since the Army Corps of Engineer is due to start the survey in September for the beach sanding process, which is only 3 to 4 months away, is the village comfortable with the process that's in place to stay very close to the Army Corps of Engineer to ensure this time around that we are getting the amount of sand that we think we should be getting on the beach side?
Yes, I mean, we will be on top of that. I think I sent you out an email earlier in the week in reference to their response with the LiDAR slash, you know, radars in terms of the renourishment and what they did. But we will be on top of that. Mark Capiello earlier mentioned about another dredging project that's coming up, which we will also take a look at. So we will be on top of that. Again, I guess the study that they, as we now found out, the study that they did the original basis on happened in, I think it was April of 24, when they
Yes.
the village then, and then they resurveyed it. But what they didn't tell us in September was they were only resurveying what they agreed to. That's kind of not exactly what we were led to believe at that meeting, that they were going to resurvey the whole village because of the January and August situations that happened after their original survey. But we are working closely with them, and I've also spoken to somebody in Senator Schumer's office who said he would help us going forward.
Thank you very much for staying close to this process.
You're welcome, Pat.
I think we're done.
What?
I don't see anybody else.
All right, can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Do you need help with anything, Alvin? Unplugging and you're good?